Architectures of the Extimate, a choreographic mapping of the PreterPark. Family Domain, the Tijuana Curio, and the Faux Stiletto, 1969. The primal scene of transgression. The user identifies the family coordinate as close-up of an American 10-year-old boy stealing a faux stiletto switchblade knife from a vendor at an arcade curio shop in Tijuana, Mexico, off the iconic, historic downtown tourist hub and brothel district along Avenida Revolution in 1969. This scene functions as the primal scene of the My Story, a moment of instruction, transgression, and identity formation. In the logic of the pop cycle, the family domain usually corresponds to Main Street, USA in the Disneyland analogy, a place of safety and origins. However, for this user, the Main Street is displaced to Avenida Revolution in Tijuana, transforming the idyll into a zone of illicit commerce and danger. Historical context: Avenida Revolution in 1969. In 1969, Tijuana was in a complex transitional phase. Avenida Revolution, historically the prohibition playground for Americans seeking alcohol and gambling in the 1920s, had evolved into a gritty, countercultural destination. The avenue was a cacophony of sensory overload. Zebra donkeys, donkeys painted with stripes for tourist photos, nightclubs like the Blue Fox and La Balena, the Whale, boasting the longest bar in the world, and an endless array of curio shops. The mention of the brothel district likely refers to the Zona Norte, which sits adjacent to the northern end of Revolution. In 1969, this area was heavily trafficked by American servicemen, Vietnam-era, and tourists. The 10-year-old boy is thus navigating a space designed for adult vices: gambling, arcades, sex, brothels, and violence, switchblades, but he is engaging with it through the lens of childhood play and theft. The specific location off the iconic hub suggests a liminal space, perhaps one of the Pasajes arcades like Pasaje Gomez or Pasaje Rodriguez, which were bustling with souvenir vendors selling leather goods, blankets, and knives. The atmosphere of 1969 Tijuana was one of ersatz adventure. As noted in historical accounts, Americans visited Revolution for the illusion of adventure, creating a dynamic where haggling and minor transgressions were part of the tourist experience. The boy's theft is an escalation of this sanctioned transgression. He refuses to pay the gringo tax and instead seizes the object of desire directly. The object, the faux stiletto switchblade. The specific object, a faux stiletto switchblade, is the objet petit of this domain. It is the object that mobilizes desire, materiality, and origin. Research into vintage switchblades from this era indicates these were likely Rizzuto Estiletto Milano clones or similar bullfighter knives. These were typically manufactured in Japan or Korea and exported to Mexico specifically for the tourist trade. They were not genuine Italian stilettos, but simulacra, copies of the knives seen in Hollywood movies like Rebel Without a Cause, sold in Mexico, made in Asia. Visual characteristics. These knives often featured pearlescent or faux stag plastic scales, handles, brass bolsters, and a safety slide button. They were mechanically fragile, often referred to as picklocks or button openers, and were cheap enough to be sold in curio shops alongside plaster saints and sombreros. Symbolism. The knife represents phallic power and the ability to cut. For a 10-year-old, stealing it is an act of claiming agency in a chaotic, foreign environment. The fact that it is faux suggests a recurring theme in the user's life: the tension between the real and the simulated. The danger is aestheticized. The weapon is a toy/souvenir, but the theft is a real crime. It rhymes with the props of the entertainment domain, objects that signify danger but are part of a performance. Community domain, Mammoth Mountain, and the Grizzly chair, 1979. The chronotope of the threshold. The user writes, "A young man and a young woman he has never met board the number 23 chairlift Grizzly at Mammoth Mountain, California in 1979. This coordinate introduces the theme of community as a transient, risk-laden experience. The ski lift functions as a specific chronotope, time-space, in the user's My Story, a suspension of time and gravity where strangers are forced into physical intimacy while facing a sublime, dangerous landscape. The anachronism of memory, the ghost chair. A critical insight emerges from the research data. Chair 23 at Mammoth Mountain was not built until 1982. The user places the memory in 1979. In the rigorous application of electrate theory, this anachronism is not a mistake to be corrected, but a screen memory, Freud, to be analyzed. The user is condensing the feeling of the late 1970s, the specific cultural mood of disco-era skiing, the pre-digital hedonism, the aesthetic of the gear, with the reality of the specific lift that became iconic later. Chair 23 is legendary because it accesses the cornice, the steepest terrain on the mountain, specifically the runs Drop Out and Wipe Out. By placing the memory in 1979, the user is merging the era of the dropout, the 70s counterculture fading into 80s excess, with the physical act of dropping in to a dangerous run. The encounter, strangers on a wire. The sociology of the chairlift in 1979 is distinct. Unlike modern lifts with individual bucket seats and safety bars often lowered, lifts of that era, specifically Yan lifts, which manufactured many of Mammoth's chairs, often featured center poles. Riders had to slide to the outside, creating a forced physical proximity or tension around the pole. This forced communion rhymes with the loving cup scene in Freaks, entertainment domain, strangers brought together by a ritual. The young man and woman are suspended above the dropout run, a double black diamond chute. The name Dropout is significant. It signifies the risk of social exit, the 60s ethos, and physical danger, the fall. The user's memory creates a community of risk. Visual signifiers, 1979 ski fashion. The visual language of 1979 skiing is crucial for the prompt. This was the era of materials, nylon, wool, and the dawn of Gore-Tex, but before the neon explosion of the mid-80s. Silhouette, tight stretch pants, jet pants, puffy down vests, and turtlenecks. Accessories, Voine cat-eye sunglasses, iconic for the era, mirrored lenses, and crucially, no helmets. The absence of helmets signifies the vulnerability and raw experience of the era. Colors, bright yellows, navy blues, rainbow stripes. The rainbow motif was huge in the late 70s, and earth tones mixed with primary colors. Entertainment domain, Freaks and the Loving Cup, 1932. The ritual of inclusion/exclusion. The user cites, Freaks 1932 American pre-code drama horror film produced and directed by Todd Browning. This coordinate represents the mythological core of the My Story. Freaks is not just a film. It is a morality play about the code of the freak. Offend one, and you offend them all. In the PreterPark, this domain corresponds to Fantasyland, but a dark fantasy where the monsters are the heroes and the beautiful people are the villains. Research backstory. The cast and the director. The prompt requires researching the individuals to find historic impacts. Todd Browning, director. Browning's backstory is essential. He ran away to join the circus at age 16 and worked as a talker and a living corpse, buried alive act. His obsession with mutilation and the freak body is often linked to a severe car accident he suffered in 1915, which left him with shattered legs and significant internal trauma. Some critics suggest castration or loss of reproductive function. This personal general accident, virilio, connects him directly to the user's theme of the cut and the accident at Rocky Flats. Olga Baklanova, Cleopatra, a Russian actress who trained at the prestigious Moscow Art Theatre. She was a star of the silent era, often playing vamps. Freaks effectively destroyed her career. The film was banned in the UK for 30 years and reviled in the US. Her performance is defined by the gesture of revulsion at the wedding feast, throwing the wine. This gesture is the punctum of the scene. Harry Earls, Hans. A member of the Doll family, a quartet of German dwarf siblings who were highly successful vaudeville and circus entertainers. Unlike the tragic Hans, Harry and his siblings were savvy business people. They pooled their earnings to buy a custom-built small house in Sarasota, Florida, where they lived together for decades. This house represents a utopian version of the PreterPark, a space designed for the freak body rather than against it. Henry Victor, Hercules, the strongman. Interestingly, Victor, who was British-German, later made a career playing Nazis in WWII films, often uncredited or as villains. This reinforces the symbolic link in the user's My Story between the strongman, authority, and fascism, a link that might resonate with the authoritarian nature of the nuclear complex in the career domain. The scene, the wedding feast, and the loving cup. The central signifier here is the loving cup. In the film, the freaks gather at a long banquet table to celebrate Hans and Cleopatra's wedding. They pass a large cup filled with wine/champagne from person to person, chanting, "We accept her, one of us, gooble gobble." Symbolism. The cup is a vessel of communion. By drinking from it, one enters the community. Cleopatra's rejection of it, tossing the wine into the faces of the freaks, is an act of abjection. Julia Kristeva. She refuses to let the improper fluid enter her body or to share fluids with the other. Rhyme. This cup rhymes with the waste drums in the career domain, containers of, dangerous fluids, and the arcade in the family domain, a container of chance. It also rhymes with the glass pipette, a vessel for measuring danger. Career domain, Rocky Flats and the radioactive lens, 1980s. The industrial sublime. The user describes photographing with a Nikon FM, equipped with a 105mm f2.8 Nikkor lens off Coal Creek Canyon Road, State Highway 72, near the Rocky Flats nuclear weapons plant. This domain represents the career, the discipline of looking. The user is a photographer documenting the invisible. In the pop cycle, This is Tomorrowland, the place of science, future, and technology. But here, it is a dystopian, atomic tomorrow. Historical context, Rocky Flats and the waste. Rocky Flats, located on a windy plateau northwest of Denver, was the primary facility for manufacturing plutonium triggers, pits, for U.S. nuclear warheads. It operated from 1952 to 1989. The history of the site is defined by secrecy and contamination. The fires, major plutonium fires, occurred in 1957 and 1969, releasing radioactive particles into the air. The raid. In June 1989, the FBI and EPA raided the plant. The first time one government agency raided another, investigating environmental crimes, specifically the illegal burning of hazardous waste and leaking drums. The cleanup. From 1992 to 2006, the site underwent a massive cleanup. Workers wore Tyvek suits and used glass pipettes to sample liquids in infinity rooms, glove boxes. They dealt with thousands of 55-gallon drums of sludge. The technology of witnessing, the Nikon FM. The user specifies a Nikon FM with a 105mm f2.8 Nikkor lens. This detail is not accidental, it is technical poetry. Nikon FM, 1977 to 1982. A fully mechanical camera. It requires no battery to operate the shutter. In a theoretical sense, it is immune to the EMP of a nuclear blast. It is a tool of pure mechanics, contrasting with the electrate digital age. It represents the truth of the mechanical era. 105mm f2.8 lens. This is a classic portrait and macro lens. Telephoto effect. It compresses perspective, making the distant nuclear plant appear closer and more looming against the mountains. Macro capability. It allows for extreme close-ups. This lens implies a dual gaze, looking at the massive industrial complex, the sublime, and looking at the microscopic radioactive particle, the invisible. The glass pipette and the glove box. Research snippets highlight the use of glass pipettes in the sampling of radioactive waste. The pipette is a recurring signifier. It is a fragile glass tube used to transport deadly fluids. It rhymes perfectly with the switchblade, a tool that pierces, and the loving cup, a vessel of fluid. The glove box, a sealed container where workers insert their hands into rubber gloves to handle plutonium, is the ultimate curio cabinet of the nuclear age, a space where you can look and touch, but never really touch. Synthesis, the emblem of the PreterPark. The final task of the electrate cartographer is to generate an emblem, a composite image that unifies the four domains into a single coat of arms or wide image for the user. This emblem serves as the logo for their PreterPark. The matrix of repeating signifiers. In the family domain, the vessel is the arcade or curio shop. The sharp instrument is the faux stiletto. The threshold is the border crossing, and the costume is tourist clothes. In the community domain, the vessel is the chairlift. The sharp instrument is the ski edges or cornice. The threshold is the dropout run, and the costume is the ski suit and goggles. In the entertainment domain, the vessel is the loving cup. The sharp instrument is the mutilation or revenge. The threshold is freak/normal, and the costume is the circus garb. In the career domain, the vessel is the waist drum or pipette. The sharp instrument is the 105mm lens. The threshold is the exclusion zone, and the costume is the Tyvek suit. The image of wide scope, IOWS. The recurring theme is the dangerous vessel and the cut. The user navigates the world by handling dangerous containers, curio shops, loving cups, waste drums, and using sharp instruments, knives, lenses, skis, to cut through the screen of reality. Conclusion: the cartographer's summary. This report has mapped the user's My Story through the logic of electricity. We have excavated the following key insights. 1. The faux stiletto is the primal object of agency, a simulacrum of power seized by a child in a zone of adult vice. 2. The chairlift, specifically the anachronistic Yan lift, represents the community of risk, a suspension of time where intimacy is forced by danger and gravity. 3. The loving cup is the central metaphor for social inclusion/exclusion. To drink is to belong. To spill is to reject. This links directly to the spilled radioactive waste of the career. 4. The Nikon FM/glass pipette are the tools of the agent. They are the instruments used to mediate between the fragile self and the toxic real. By inputting the provided prompts, the user will generate the visual assets necessary to construct their PreterPark. This virtual theme park is not merely a nostalgic trip, it is a consultancy machine. It allows the user to walk through the accidents of their life, the theft, the dropout, the freak show, the contamination, and recognize them not as failures, but as the structural supports of their identity.